today. So in today's live session, we are going to cover subclass 482, which falls under employer sponsorship visa stream. Employer sponsorship visas are mainly designed for employers who are operating in Australia lawfully to address their skill shortages and hire employees in an occupation which are not they are not able to fill with the skilled labor in Australia. So we will explain entire visa process in detail now. So how it works is the first one that there are a few categories in which the 482 visa subclass, in the employer sponsorship visa categories. The number one is 407, which is a training and research visa. The subclass 482, which is we are going to discuss, which is a TSS, also known as TSS actually, temporary skill shortage visas. Subclass 186, which is ENS, employer nomination scheme, and subclass 494, which is a regional employer sponsored visa, which is generally known as SESR. Now, in today's session, we will mainly focus on the subclass 482, and also we will be taking few of your questions as well at the end of the presentation. So feel free to put in your questions in the comment box, and we will be able to, once I finish my presentation, we will be able to address your questions and respond to your queries in this video. Now, in the 482 visa, first and foremost requirement for any of the employer sponsorship visas, you must have an eligible sponsor who is operating lawfully in Australia, an Australian business, to sponsor you. And the Australian business, most of the cases, they have to conduct a labor market testing to demonstrate that they tried to hire an Australian citizen for this role, and they could not find any suitable candidate, and therefore they have decided to sponsor an overseas worker, maybe like you. In 482 visa, there are mainly three stages. Number one is a standard business sponsorship, which is lodged on behalf of the company, so which is an Australian business. Now, in this application, the business is an applicant, so business has to provide an evidence that they are lawfully operating in Australia. So how do we prove that? By providing registration documents such as ABN number, ACN number, business name registration, ASIC extracts, financial documents of the business such as business activity statement, profit and loss statement, and financial reports of the business, which is balance sheets and financial statements together. So this is fairly simple application where we have to also identify who is the director of the company, who are the shareholders, and all the details. If the business operates under a trust, we also have to provide the trust details. Now, this sponsorship application generally costs the business $420 plus if you pay by the card, so the card surcharge. That's the first stage, which is fairly simple. The second stage is nomination. In the nomination application, there are certain explanations and documents that the business has to provide. We will go one by one so that it's very clear. In the nomination application, the first thing that the business has to provide is that the business tried to look for an Australian citizen, which is we call in 482 or in the legislative language, we call it a labor market testing. So the labor market testing includes that the business has to advertise the position on at least 3 national websites, employment websites, where 2 could be any of the employer's choice, and 1 has to be a government website, which is job search. And the advertisement has to contain certain information such as the position description, the salary, the work location, etc. Now, after the labor market testing is conducted, the business has to have the advertisement live for 28 days before they can launch the nomination. And the labor market testing is the compulsory process for a 482 visa. If the business has not done the labor market testing, then the business most likely would not satisfy the criteria for a nomination until unless there is an exemption that applies to the particular application. So there are some exemptions to labor market testing as well. So if you do qualify in particular case for a labor market testing exemption, you do not have to conduct the labor market testing. So the business does not have to conduct the labor market testing. The next part is a position description. Now, in the position description, the business has to provide a detailed job description outlining what job the nominated person will be doing, and that has to be actually in line with the NZESCO code description for that particular nominated occupation. In many cases, we have noticed that, let's say, for example, an accountant, nominated occupation is an accountant. However, the person is doing the bookkeeping duties, right? So the bookkeeping duties are not in line with the NZESCO code for an accountant. So this application is likely to fail. There are also some caveats for certain occupations, such as accountant or let's say contract administrator or project administrator. There are some occupations which has the additional caveats that applies to them, and each occupation has different caveats. So the nominating sponsor or business has to ensure that they also meet the caveat. For example, again, an accountant being sponsored in a company, the company must have at least 5 employees working in the business, and the company has to have at least 1 million turnover in the business. If they do not have this, then the nomination application is likely to fail because they do not meet the caveat requirement. Also, the position must not be an accounting clerk duties. So the duties that are nominated for this occupation must be in line with an NZESCO code for accounting. And certain occupations may also have a higher salary requirement, like for example, marketing specialist. They have minimum salary of 65,000, for example, so that any nominated position with less than 65,000 position, less than $65,000 annual salary is not would not really likely to meet the caveat requirement, subsequently would fail to meet the requirement for a nomination approval. The next part is the employment agreement. Now, the employment agreement has to meet the minimum salary requirement, which is called TSMIT, which is set as 53,900 at the moment. So the minimum salary for a nominated occupation has to be 53,900. That is the minimum. But if the market rate for that particular occupation is above 53,900, like for example, a software engineer, an average salary for a software engineer most of the times is around 60 to 70,000. So even though the minimum salary requirement for a 482 visa is 53,900, the market rate being paid to an Australian citizen in the same occupation is slightly higher or maybe significantly higher than the actual amount set by the Department of Home Affairs. So even though the department has set 53,900, the nominated position cannot have the 53,900 salary because the market rate for that occupation is significantly higher. The next part is that the business has to demonstrate that the salary that is being proposed for the nominee, who is an overseas worker, is the same salary that they would have paid to an Australian citizen. There are a few ways that the business can demonstrate this. Number one is that the business can provide a salary survey from online sources where they can look into the advertisements, positions that are advertised, similar positions that are advertised online, and write a survey saying that, see, the average salary proposed by most of the employers in this role in their job advertisements is around, let's say, 60K. And this is how we have come to a conclusion that the market rate for this occupation is 60K. Or if there is another option is, let's say, if they have an Australian employee working in their organization, doing the same role in the same occupation and getting the same salary, then it's easily justifiable that, see, the person who's working in our organization, who is an Australian citizen doing the similar role or the same role as a proposed nominee is getting the same salary as the proposed nominee, then that's fine. So for example, a software engineer who is an Australian citizen working in company A, receiving a $60,000 salary, and the company is applying for another nomination for a software engineer because they need 2 software engineers. They found one Australian citizen, they need one, they are sponsoring one from overseas. Now the overseas person is also being paid 60K for the nominated role. That means because they're paying the Australian citizen the same role, the same salary, it meets the criteria for equivalent terms and condition of this employment. So basically, the justification has to be that the salary being proposed for the nominee is not less than, and the terms and condition also are not less favorable than what applies to an Australian citizen. The next part is the business has to also provide an explanation about the genuineness of the sponsorship, which does not also only include the particular part of the genuineness, but also includes what are the business services, what what services business provide, how does this position fits in the scope of this business, and what is the org chart of the business, why there is nobody else in the business who can take over this position. This position was not created to facilitate the visa for someone, but actually there is a genuine skill shortage in the business. We also have to explain in the business, in this document, that the business's financial condition is that strong that they will be able to nominate this person, pay the nominee for, let's say, maybe 2 years, or the period for whatever period they have nominated for. If it is 2 years, then 2 years. If it is for 3 years or 4 years. So maximum nomination can be done is 4 years, right? For an occupation which is on a short-term skill occupation list, the nomination can be for 2 years. And for the occupations which are on medium and long-term list, the nomination can be for up to 4 years. Now, in this document, the business also provides the financial documents and justify that we are financially strong and our business is able to pay this nominee the proposed salary for future or for the proposed period. The next part is the visa application. Sorry, before I move into the visa application, I would also like to bring to your attention for the cost. Now, the cost for this application in the nomination, the nomination application cost is 330, where the business has to pay 330 for the application. And on top of it, the business will also have to pay the SAF levy, which is $1,200 for the business with an annual turnover of less than 10 million. And if the turnover is more than 10 million, if the annual turnover is more than 10 million, the business has to pay $1,800 per year. So for example, if the business is sponsoring an electrical engineer for a 4 years visa, and the turnover is, let's say, about 10 million, the business has to pay $1,800 into 4, so that's 7,200. If the business turnover was less than 10 million, the business has to pay 4,800, because that's 1,200 per year into 4 years, because the business is nominating the position for 4 years, they have to pay $4,800 for it. Now, moving on to the last part, which is the visa application. In the visa application, the business has no role to play. So the first stage is a sponsorship. Second stage is a nomination. Both are lodged on behalf of the company. The third stage is the visa application, which is lodged on behalf of the applicant. So the applicant now have to meet certain criteria. So the applicant will have to provide an evidence that they have relevant skills and qualification for this position. If this occupation is a licensed occupation, then they also have to have a license for that occupation. Also, if the applicant's occupation is on a short-term list, then they have to have a 5 English language score, which is IELTS 5 band overall, with not less than 4.5. And if the occupation is from the medium and long-term skill list, then the 5 English language score is IELTS 5 overall, with no less than 5 band in each module. Now, on top of it, the applicant also have to provide an evidence that the applicant has at least 2 years of full-time work experience. Now, this experience can be part-time. So if it is a part-time work experience, the experience has to be calculated on pro rata basis, which means that if the applicant has 12 months of experience part-time, so it becomes a 6 months full-time experience. So in this case, you can also have a combination of a full-time and part-time work experience. Let's say someone has 1 year and 6 months full-time and another 1 year part-time, that is 6 months full-time. So this is coming up to 18 months full-time experience and 6 months of part-time, 12 months of part-time experience, which is equivalent to 6 months full-time. Then it also meets the requirement. So, and this work experience requirement is at the time of decision. So the applicant, if the applicant is short for 1 month or 2 months, then by the time your application is decided, you would have actually met the criteria for 2 years of full-time work experience. Now, the duration of the visa also depends on the occupation. So if the occupation which is nominated is on a short-term skilled occupation list, the visa is granted for 2 years. And if the occupation is on a medium and long-term skill list, the visa is granted for up to 4 years, depending on how long the nomination was lodged for. Now, once you get the 482 visa, there could be an additional pathway for a permanent visa. So if your occupation is on a medium and long-term skill list, there is definitely a pathway. So there are 2 ways you can apply for the permanent visa after 3 years, which is number 1 is you work 3 years on a 482 visa with the same sponsor in the same position. And after 3 years, the company would sponsor you for a 186 visa under a temporary resident transition stream. And you could apply for the permanent visa that way. Or if you complete the total 3 years of experience, which was 2 years that you used for a 482 visa, and 1 year once you get a 482 visa, you will complete 1 more year full-time. And this is total 3 years full-time experience. And if you're able to obtain a positive skills assessment for your occupation, then you can also apply for a 186 visa under a direct transition. We will also come back in next month's session with 186 visa. So this session is mainly dominated for the 482 visa section so that we can ensure that all the details are covered. Now also for a 482 visa, for some occupation, you do need a skills assessment. Now certain occupation has a mandatory skills assessment requirement, which is like, let's say most of the occupations which are trade occupations has a mandatory skills assessment requirement, but that also depends on the country of passport. Even though the skills assessment is not mandatory for all occupations, the case officer has not for all the occupation and not for all the country of passports, but the case officer can request for the skills assessment if required, and the applicants are still obliged to provide a skills assessment outcome. Now, once your visa is granted, you can include your partner in the application as well. If you have a partner at the time of application, you can also include. If your partner is overseas and if you're in Australia at the time of application, that's also completely fine. And as a part of your visa application, you will also be completing medical examination and police checks and purchasing and health insurance too. Now, if your partner is offshore and let's say you're not married yet, but you got your visa, 482 visa now, and now you want to apply for a subsequent entrant for your partner, you can also do so. The only thing that you need on top of the other documents from your relationship, that you also need a letter from your employer stating that they have no objection if the department grants the visa for the partner of the employee. So you just need a no objections letter from the employer as well for you to be able to apply for the subsequent visa for your partner if you get married later on after your visa is granted. Now, this is all about the 482 visa. The cost for a 482 visa is dependent on the occupation. So if your occupation is on a short-term list, the fees is around 1,200 or so. If your occupation is on medium and long-term list, then you will be paying around $2,690 or so. And also there's a subsequent application charge. That means that if your current visa is from the list of the table that is provided by the department, and that visa was granted while you were in Australia, then you will also have to pay an additional application fees, which is $700, which is called a subsequent application charge. So that is determined by what visa you hold and whether that visa was granted in Australia or that was granted while you were outside Australia. Now, the floor is open for the questions. So we will take the questions from you one by one. So I'm first moving on to the Facebook questions. So the first question that I have noticed is from Rahul. What are the chances getting visa for electrician from overseas? So Rahul, yes, if you have a license, so you first have to obtain the license in Australia for you to be able to work as an electrician. But if you do have a license, and skills assessment is mandatory for electrician, so you also have to get a positive skills assessment. And if you do have a sponsor in Australia who wants to sponsor you as an electrician, yes, you can apply for 482 visa as an electrician. But most of the times, people who meet this criteria would probably meet the 186 direct entry stream, which we will cover in the next session when we come back with the employer sponsorship session. So you probably might qualify for a 186 direct entry stream as well. Next question is from Malki Apuhami. I did accounting and working as an assistant accountant. So can I apply for 186 direct entry with this job position, or it should be accountant? What is the minimum salary for this? Malki, so the assistant accountant role depends on your job duties as well. So the job title itself does not actually meet the criteria. So let's say in a way that somebody's job title is an accountant, but their duties are not actually of an accountant and are of a low skill duties, like which are probably more of a clerk duties, then even though their job title is accountant, they are not likely to meet the criteria. The same way, if your job title is an assistant accountant, but you do significant duties that are in line with the NZSCO, then yes, you can apply for a 482 or 186. Now, you can apply for 186 direct entry stream if you have 3 years of full-time work experience and a positive skills assessment. Now, what is the minimum salary for this occupation? Now, this, as I said, the minimum salary is 53,900. However, the market rate in your city, let's say if you're based in Sydney, for example, if the market rate is around 65,000 for an accountant, then your salary should be around 65,000. The next question is from Nirmani Bhagya. How about childcare worker in Victoria Dama? Now, yes, if childcare worker is in Dama and especially in Victoria's Dama list, then yes, you can apply for a Dama, and that probably would go under 482 a labor agreement stream. And we will be conducting a labor agreement stream separately because that's a very lengthy topic. But yes, if you're working in a specific region in Victoria where the Dama is applicable, and if you meet the Dama's requirement, yes, definitely you can apply for a childcare worker in Dama. So Rahul Gupta, next question is from Rahul Gupta. Is it possible to get sponsored in any of the occupation for 186? So Rajesh Gupta. So Rajesh, for 186 visa under a direct entry stream, your occupation must be on a medium and long-term skill list only. So if your occupation is on a short-term skill list, you cannot apply for a 186 direct entry stream. Do we need to have a skills assessment to apply for a 482 visa in a short-term skill list? That's the next question from Saurabh Sharma. Saurabh, there is no need to get a positive skills assessment for a 482 visa unless it is a mandatory requirement for your occupation. So most of the occupations like chef, motor mechanic, and only for certain countries, not for all the countries, carpenter, those occupations, most of the trade occupations do require a mandatory skill assessment for certain countries. So it depends on the country of origin as well as the occupation. But general occupations, general professional occupations, most of the time does not need a positive skill assessment for 482, even if it is on a short-term skill base. The next question is from Rohit Mahato. What about cook and chef? So Rohit, if you are applying as a cook, then you will be going under the short-term skill list. So that means that you will be applying for a 2 years visa. But if you go for a medium and long-term list as a chef, so if you do meet the requirement for a chef, then you have to have a skills assessment as a chef. And again, depends on certain occupations like cook and chef do require a mandatory skill assessment for certain country of passport. So for example, let's say people from India, Philippines, from my memory, yes, they do need a skills assessment for these occupations, but it depends on each country of passport. It may vary. But Rohit, yes, you can apply for the 482 visa or a 186 visa as a chef. For a 482 visa as a cook, also you can apply. Next question is from Utsav. Can I apply for a 482 if my partner is on a student visa? Yes, Utsav, if you are on any visa in Australia, as long as you're on substantive visa or any bridging visa that is not prevented by Section 48, you can apply for a 482 visa while you are in Australia on a student visa as well, as long as you meet the rest of the requirement. Next question is from Sashanka Shekhar. I am applying 186 direct entry stream tomorrow for a developer programmer. how long it will take for the visa recently. So Sashanka, generally what we have noticed is the processing time varies from occupation to occupation. And if you're in the critical, if your occupation is from the critical sector, you're likely to get an outcome faster. For a developer programmer, my experience, most of my recent applications were finalized in 1 to 3 months. In fact, I had one application that was finalized in less than a month's time. So you can expect that you probably get an outcome in 1 to 3 months time. Now, next question is again from Utsav Patel. I have a positive skills assessment. I will finish 2 years experience next April. What will be the best time to contact the agent and employer? So I believe that if you're qualifying for if you're completing the 2 years of work experience, you will qualify for a 482 visa in April 2023. Then the best time, probably because your employer will also have to conduct the labor market testing and try to look for an Australian citizen to fill in your role, and then only be able to apply for a 482 nomination if they're unsuccessful. So in that case, the employer can start the labor market testing and everything from February or March, so that if they're unsuccessful in finding a suitable local employee, then they can sponsor you for a 482 visa by the time you complete your work experience requirement. Next question is from Sumit Patel. For subclass 186, is it compulsory to have an Australian experience, or any back home experience can include in 3 years experience? Experience is already assessed by Engineers Australia. Sumit, yes, you can include overseas work experience for subclass 186 and 482 as well, as long as that work experience is after the qualification, relevant qualification you gain for that occupation. So as long as, so in your case, you already have an experience assessed by Engineers Australia, so that's completely fine. You can use that work experience. The next question is from S. Munir Shah. How many countries are you doing? Munir, we process applications for Australia. Does not matter what is the country of origin for our clients. As long as they meet the criteria, we can assist them with the application. Anirudh Pandya, the next question. I have 3 years assessed work experience as an accountant. Am I eligible to apply for a 186 directly? Yes, Anirudh, if your duties are, so your experience is already assessed as an accountant, that means your duties are complex enough to be in line with NZS code description for an accountant. So yes, your company can sponsor you for a 186 visa in a direct entry stream if you have completed 3 years of work experience full time, and you have a positive skills assessment, and you have minimum 6 each in IELTS or PTE. The next question is from Anmol Deep. Hi, my partner has a positive skills assessment as a critical care nurse, and I have a motor mechanic skills assessment and will be applying on her behalf as we are in de facto relationship. What are the chances for 190 visa in Victoria, and how long does it take for the invitation? Now, we have noticed that if you are a registered nurse and in Victoria, most of the time, if you are at higher points, around let's say 80, even at lower points, we have noticed that people get invited. But I'm just assuming that let's say to be safe, if you have higher points, your chances of getting an invitation is quite well. And if you have launched an ROI already, that's great. But if you haven't launched an ROI, the ROI for Victoria has already closed, and now you will be able to apply for an ROI in new financial year from July 2022. The next question is from Masood Rana. How long does it take for a 186 visa as a cook transition stream? Mr. Masood, the processing time right now for the 186 visa varies from occupation to occupation, as I mentioned before. So for a critical occupations, generally the processing time is around 3 months. For non-critical occupations, the processing time can vary for up to 3 to 6 months, and sometimes some cases we'll notice that it takes even longer. Now, next question is from Raj Bista, accountant from Sydney, completing 2 years after 6 months. So yes, Mr. Raj, you can apply for a 482 visa if you are completing 2 years work experience after 6 months. If your company is not able to find a suitable people or accountant to work for them who is an Australian citizen, then they can choose to sponsor you through a 482 visa, because this visa is definitely designed for applicants or the businesses who are not able to fulfill their skill shortages from the Australian labor market. The next question again is from Sriharsha Sunkavali. Sorry, I think this is the first time. I have completed 1 year of my experience with one company, but I've changed my company. Am I able to apply for a 482 if I change my company? So for 482 visa, the 2 years work experience requirement, it can be from any company. It doesn't have to be with the same employer that is sponsoring. So yes, if you have completed 1 year of experience and you're working for another company now, and now you want to apply for a 482 visa with your new employer, yes, your new employer can apply for a 482 visa for you. The next question is from Samir A. Razak. What are the benefits under employer sponsorship visa, such as schooling and medical? I am not a right person to advise on the benefits, because the benefits depends on, and it changes from state to state. So medical benefits, I am aware of that there is none, because you are required to have your own insurance policy for it during the period of 482 visa. So, but if you go for a 186 visa, yes, once you get the visa, you get a Medicare card and you can enroll in a Medicare, apply for citizenship, and you can also get a benefits of for schooling for kids because it's a permanent visa. But on a 482 visa, the schooling benefits varies from state to state, and medical benefits definitely you have to have your own health insurance. The next question is from Utsav Shrestha. I'm waiting for my 485 graduate visa. Can I apply for 186 visa now? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Yes, Utsav. So, being on any visa, either a 485 or a, even if you're on bridging visa for a 485 visa, you can apply for a 186 visa if you meet the criteria. The benefit is that if you apply now, you will be in the queue now, so that, you get an outcome. So sooner you start, sooner you finish. So that's the key. So if you apply for 186 now, that doesn't stop you from applying for it. And the disadvantage is only one, that you get a bridging visa C, which is not a big disadvantage because it still has a full-time work rights but you're likely to get a 485 visa. So the bridging visa C will never come into effect for another 1.5 years or 2 years. And by that time, most likely your application will be finalized. So, I believe that there is no challenge for you to meet this criteria or apply for a 186 visa, as long as you have 3 years work experience and the positive skills assessment. The next question is from Kinlai. Hi, Vaibhav. Currently, I am on a bridging visa for 485 visa. Recently, I received a visa extension notice till 30 September. Can I apply for a 482 visa with my current visa? Yes, you can apply for a 482 visa because you have the 485 already. So assuming, because your question is a bit confusing, but I'm assuming that you have a 485 visa already. So if you have a 485, you can apply for a 482 visa while you are on 485, no problem. Even though you're on bridging visa, you can still apply. The only thing is that if you're on a bridging visa and you apply for a 482 visa while on a bridging visa, then you get a bridging visa C with no work right, which is then very difficult to get the work right for, but then it is possible. But because you are on a 485 visa already, you will still get a bridging visa A with a full-time work rights on the bridging visa as well. Utsav Shrestha forgot to mention that I have a positive skills assessment and 2 years part-time and 10 years full-time work experience in Australia. So I hope, Utsav, that my answer has already addressed your queries. Next question is from Ashina Sharma. How can I calculate work experience? I will be completing 3 years in November, but there are a few weeks I had to go on unpaid leave. So Ashina, basically how you calculate your work experience is the 3 years must be excluding any unpaid leaves. So if you went for, let's say, 4 weeks of unpaid leave, then you have to just work 3 years and 1 month so that you cover that gap that you've created in between by taking unpaid leave. So you just have to fill in that gap. Next question is from Sumit Patel. May I know which main documents are required for 186 from employer, as my employer is already happy to sponsor after 6 months? Is there any document which needs to be done at this stage? Most of the documents are required to be done, I would say, 2 months prior to your intended date to lodgement. So there's nothing that your employer has to do right now, but we will need, as if you go back to this video, the documentation are pretty much the same as 482. So if you go back in the initial discussion about the sponsorship and nomination, so similar documents you will also need for a 186 visa. Next question is from Masood Rana again. Sorry, I'm waiting for 14 months. Can I do anything for exemption? Example, notify immigration. Yes, you can request, you can send an email follow up. So I think we are processing your application, Mr. Masood. So you can always contact us and let us know. And then we can also send an email to the department to follow up. And we believe that we might have done it, but I don't want to disclose your information on the social media. Next question is from Anirudh Pandya. Will accountants get 189 or 190 anytime soon? Anirudh, yes, we have seen the 190 from New South Wales recently with candidates with higher work experience. So if you do have a long-term work experience, yes, there is a possibility for you to get 190. However, we haven't seen any 189 invitation in the last 12 months at least. The next question is from Vaibhav Patel. Is full-time work experience considered as 38 hours per week? And how can we add partner in 482? Yes, the full 38 hours per week is considered full-time. In some cases, if a lot of companies have 35 hours per week as a full-time employment as well, so it can be counted, but nothing less than 35 can be counted towards full-time work experience, unless there is a specific situation for that particular occupation. And how can we add the partner in 482? So if you already hold a 482 visa, as mentioned before, then you have to apply for a 482 subsequent visa. You can get in touch with us and we can help you out in applying for a 482 subsequent as well. And if you want to know more about it, you can also go back to the video previous in this video, and you will understand that you can apply for a subsequent application by obtaining a no objection letter from your employer. Next question is from Rosie Rose. How long is the processing time for 186 for a chef? See, the processing time for a chef is not something that we can predict. But if you ask me, the most of the time, the processing time I would anticipate is to be between 3 to 6 months as of now. And especially for a chef recently, because we have seen that the hospitality industry has been added into critical and in the high demand sector. So definitely your possibilities are higher. It also depends on the company's size and whether the nomination has been approved or not. So if the company's size is well, the company's financial condition are well, then you're likely to get an outcome faster as well. That is what we have noticed from our experience. Now, last question that we have from Ravi Babu. Do we need a full skills assessment after sponsor work visa for a PR? No, so if you are going for a 482 to 186 TRT stream, you don't need a skills assessment for 186 visa as well, even though it's a permanent visa. You just need minimum English language requirement, and you must have worked minimum 3 years with a sponsor while holding a 482 visa. So yes, you can apply for the 186 visa without skills assessment. And another question from Vaibhav Patel, what is the processing time for mechanical engineer 482 and 186? Again, processing time is something that we cannot predict, but we generally anticipate that most of the applications gets finalized in 3 to 6 months. If not, the maximum that we have seen is around 12 months. And if the 12 months passes, we generally tend to follow up with the department to see if the file is, being actively processed or not. And most of the time after follow-up, we do get a response. Can we count in internship in experience? That's the next question from Pooja Singh. So Pooja, no, the internship, if it is unpaid, you cannot count the work experience, or if it is not at an appropriate skill level, you might not be able to count the internship in the requirement in meeting the skills assessment, in meeting the work experience requirement. Excuse me for my voice. Next question is from Rosie Rose. Can I please know the total cost for 186 visa with partner? Unfortunately, Rosie, the cost varies from because of a lot of factors, which includes the company's turnover, the number of applicants in the application. But if you ask me for a nomination, let's say generally between 3,500 to 5,500, plus the visa application would cost you around, for a couple, around 6,000 to 7,000, and on top of the agent fees, which varies from case to case again, but the average market rate is around 6,000 to 8,000 for agent fees. The next question is from Joe Sting. For childcare worker, room leader positions, do we need a skills assessment for application for 482 or 494 visa? For 494 visa, we'll also have to check whether the childcare worker is on the list for any of this visa. And if yes, then for 494, you do need a skills assessment. For 482, I believe you don't need a skills assessment. The next question is from Ravi Babu. Can we work in between after 485 to 482? Yes, you can. So you can work for the same employer, which is ideal and desirable. But you can also work for someone else as well at the same time while the application is in process. However, once the 482 is granted, then you cannot work for anyone else. So thank you very much, guys, for joining this session. And we will be coming back every week, Friday, same time, same place on our social media channels. And we will be conducting live sessions on different topics. So if you do have questions regarding different topics, you will also know in advance that what's the topic that we are covering next week. So and that will be also displayed on our social media channels next week. So if you do have questions, feel free to put in the questions here as well. And if you do have questions regarding the future topics that we bring in, feel free to join. And we would love to see you in every session that we conduct. And we are delighted to help everyone in the who has participated in this live session and putting the questions. The purpose of this live session is to create awareness about the visas and ensure that the applicants do understand the criteria before they get into the applications, because a lot of time we have noticed that the applicants are not aware of the process and they end up getting refusal or getting into situations which are then very hard to fix. So it's always better to ensure that we create an awareness for people. And I'm sorry, I have a few more questions that I can take quickly, which is the next question is that from Rosie Rose again, what are the agent charges I would like to apply from you? So the charges is, as I said, between 6,000 to 8,000, depending on the case. So that will be the range for us as well. And can I submit my PT result after a month of applying? So for 482 visa, the English language requirement is at the time of decision, but for 186, because Rosie, you're aiming to apply for 186, you need the English language score at the time of application. Is there any pathway for a PR for a massage therapist, or it's only eligible for 482 visa? So if that brings up a very good topic as well, Nastasia. So if you are on a 482 visa already, and if you were in Australia during February 2020 to December 2021 on a 482 visa, then the department has recently announced changes that the people who were on a 482 visa or a 457 visa during this period that I mentioned and worked for at least 1 year, and they were here at least for 1 year, then they have an option for a massage therapist to apply for 160 RT stream, because you contributed. So this is a new announcement that the department has made recently that will come into effect from 1st of July this year. So yes, if you are already on a 482 visa, you have an option. But if you are not already on a 482 visa, you may not have this option to apply for 160 RT stream. And in that case, you only have a 482 visa. However, then you can also find a sponsor in the regional area and then move into a 494 visa, which can later on lead to a 191 visa. That's a permanent visa. So we will be conducting sessions on these topics eventually. So you can always tune in to our social media channels and keep an eye. We will bring up the 494 and how the 482 candidates can also go on 494 eventually and get to a PR. The next question is from Vaibhav Patel. I do have certificate 4 on commercial cookery and did masters on accounting. I do have 3 years of full-time experience after certificate 4, and my employer is willing to give me a 186 entry. Am I eligible to apply for a skills assessment from TRA and apply for a 186 direct entry stream? Yes, Pradeep, you can apply for a skills assessment if you have 3 years of full-time work experience. And if your company is happy to sponsor, you can also apply for a 186, because from the information that you mentioned, you do meet the requirement. Next question is from Ravi Babu. Once 482, can I do other work? Yes. Once you're on a 482 visa, you cannot work for anyone else. You can only work for the nominating business, which is your sponsoring company. The next question is from Rosie Rose. What about the temporary skill migration income threshold? So for Rosie, the requirement is, as I said, minimum 53,900, and you have to ensure that you're getting paid according to the market rate for your occupation. And we generally do conduct the market research and advise you when we take up your case that this is the salary that it has to be, and if it is not, then whether you are able to justify the equivalent terms and condition of employment or not. So we can give an advice on that accordingly. So we thank you for joining in our session today, and we hope you appreciate our effort in creating this awareness. And we thank you for joining our session, and we welcome you to put your review about our services and about this session in our social media platforms. And specifically, if you like the session, we would really love to see your feedback on our Facebook and Google reviews. So if you can take some time out for us and put a Google reviews for us, it really helps us in doing and keeps us motivated in doing the right job. And we wish you a very good evening and happy weekend. And we look forward to see you again in the next session on next Friday at the same time. Thank you for joining today.